Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to ozcastnetwork.com for details.
Ozcast.
Episode 4 of the Maker and the Drinker podcast. My name is Jared Walsh and I'm the drinker. John Retsis is the maker from First Drop Wines. JR, tell everybody why they need to get up to the home of the brave to eat the incredible food you got up there this summer.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jared. Look, when we started our little Home of the Brave, cellar door, 4 or 5 years ago, we wanted to have a really authentic experience. And it's something that is, I think, quite unique in the wine industry in South Australia, at least, where, you know, you can come up and enjoy an authentic tapas experience, taste wines from the Barossa, the Adelaide Hills and McLaren Vale, but also taste wines that we don't typically make in Australia, or haven't typically made in Australia, that are emerging varieties like Anise, Nebbiolo, Barbera, Montepulciano, and so on and so forth. So it's a unique, offering, and it's pretty cool as well. It's pretty relaxed. You can come in with your thongs, you can come in with a suit, you can bring your dog, you can bring your cat, you can bring your mother-in-law.
Okay, all of the above. This is a very exciting episode 4 we're about to get into. Ozcast Network, Andy and Liam have given us this studio space, and they have a brilliant range of podcasts you can listen to. You can advertise on their podcast via podvertising as well. Okay, it is time to meet George. Let's get into it. Episode 4 of The Maker and the Drinker from George's on Waymouth. George from George's is here. I'm pumped about this, JR. Can you tell my energy is just lifted?
You're definitely a little bit more pumped than I've seen you in the past, Jared, so well done.
George,
Thanks
welcome.
Thanks for having me.
Now, he's quite popular on the podcast scene. I've seen George all over the socials doing lots of interviews lately. It's been a big year. We have so much to get through. Where do you want to start, Johnny?
George has a rich history in hospitality, dating back from when he was a young kid, I guess, at his dad's milk bar, and, you know, culminating in the brilliant George's restaurant on Waymouth Street, but also a rich wine knowledge and a knowledge of and a passion for Greek wines that George is now importing. So we can touch on all of those things, George, if you want to blast
Absolutely.
off and give us your life. This is your life, George.
Wow, here we go. We'll keep it short and sweet.
No, you don't have to keep it short and sweet. No, people drive on Waymouth and they see George's, and it's an institution here in South Australia, and the fact that people can connect with the journey that led you to having a chat with us on this podcast, I think is really important.
Well, firstly, thank you to both of you, and thanks, Jared. I really appreciate your time and giving me an opportunity to come over and have a little chat to you both. But George's on Waymouth, well, let's go back a little bit further. So, born in Canberra, grew up and worked with my father in the milk bar, the downtown milk bar in Marnica. So it's a bit of an institution back home. It's been the same business for over 70 years. Dad was there for over 45. So as a kid growing up, I, worked with Dad, after school. It'd be, straight to the shop. Dad would be, let's get your homework sorted because you've got work to do. Come out, start mopping the floor, showed me how to make a coffee, showed me how to balance a till, and Dad just taught me the work ethic, what needs to be done to achieve things, and it's done by hard work and having a very clear idea on what you're doing, which combines, integrity, respect, humility, and that's something that we use today at George's on Waymouth when it comes to servicing our guests. So growing up back home, studied in the industry, managed many restaurants, opened my first restaurant at the age of 21, worked for the casino, many hotels in Canberra. Growing up as a boy, came to Adelaide quite regularly for holidays as we have relatives here, and Mum and Dad would bring us here usually every Christmas, and we had beautiful memories, family trips here, and I always wanted to come and work in Adelaide, and the time came where I left home, came here on my own, and the rest is history. I met my wife a year later, managed a few restaurants around Adelaide, was very fortunate enough to work with the great Chong Lu at the Grange restaurant at the Hilton back in the day. And in 2002, Vula and I opened George's on Waymouth. So it's, time flies, as they say, and it's been quite an experience and a journey, and something that, for me, I just love looking after people, Jared. So that's why I do it, John. And, combining the wine element, as much as I love it, I'm very passionate about wine. I wanted to bring the Greek wine side of things into our business. So in 2016, I was invited over to Greece by an importer on the eastern seaboard. It was a group of SOMs from around the country that went over to Greece. We did a quick trip throughout the country, met up with producers throughout northern Greece, central Greece, the island of Crete. And when I came back home, that really just sparked something inside me to give it a go. And hence Byzantine Wine Merchants was born in 2018. And we work with 6 to 7 families in Greece where we focus purely on indigenous varietals, as 80% of these varieties in Greece are indigenous to the country, nowhere else in the world, so they're very unique. They have a sense of place, and they can be compared to certain varietals throughout Europe, but they're quite unique, they're delicious, and they work very well with food. And I'm very proud to have these wines here in Australia. And then the restaurant element, the George's on Waymouth side, is actually a bit like our cellar door, where we can showcase these wines to our customers. We offer tailored tastings. We can take you on a little journey of Greece to find the right wine that you'd want to enjoy with your food at the restaurant.
That's amazing.
Great. Yeah, it is great. And look, just on the wide side of things, I think Greece, like a lot of countries where there's not clarity around, or misinformation, or not enough education around their industries. So in terms of wine, Greece gets a pretty bad rap because everybody thinks that Greek wine is something that's rough and ready, and you drank once when you were backpacking through Greece, and
Correct.
It's just a rough expression of a white wine or a Retsina or whatever it may be. The fact of the matter is, Greece's wine industry or wine production and winemaking is thousands of years old. And some of the oldest vineyards, but also some of the oldest varieties in the world are indigenous to Greece.
What sort of climate? Is it varies like all around Australia, the climate varies, so you are going to get all the different kind of tastes with Greek wine?
Yeah, and in terms of Greece's location, being right at the crossroads between Europe and Asia, and also, Crete is quite close to Africa. There's a varying set of climatic conditions and mesoclimates around the country, where you've got altitude in the north, and you've got proximity to those winds out of Africa in the south, and in say Crete and other islands. So it's a massive cross section of not only soils, but also climatic conditions. And George will probably touch on it a little better. He's very expert on Greece and Greece's viticulture, indigenous varieties, and a rich winemaking history, which is thousands of years old, literally 4,000 or 5,000 years old, I kid you not.
Greece is actually one of the oldest winemaking regions of the world, but like John mentioned earlier, when people think about Greece, they don't think about wine. They probably think more about, when it comes to beverages, ouzo, Retsina, Greek islands, holidays. It's not going to probably happen at the moment, but it's very unique. So if you look, a perfect example is, say, Santorini. The queen of Greek white varietals is called Assyrtiko, and it originates from Santorini, volcanic island. So volcanic soils, an island that never got hit with phylloxera, as disease can't harbour in those soils. It gets little to no rain. Like last year, I think in Santorini, it didn't even rain 100 mils last year in Santorini, yet they grow fruit. So it's quite unique as far as an island that produces, without doubt, the queen of Greek white wine varietals. It's what put Greece on the map internationally, and it's a variety that grows in what they call a kalura vine system, or like a basket woven vine system on the ground, to protect the fruit from the heat and the wind, because it's a very hot, windy island. So the fruit grows on the inside of these canopies to to protect them purely from the blasting sandy winds that the island has. And it's quite special. I remember when I was there and I went out for dinner with the owner of a producer that we import called Vasaltis, which translates to basalt. And we were going back to the car after having a bite to eat, and I noticed that I actually mentioned to him. I said to John, it's actually been raining, has it? I said, look at all the. It's quite wet. And he said, no. He goes, George, all that dew on the car is purely from the moisture in the air. So a beautiful thing about Santorini is the vines sweat at night, and that's another way how they get a drink. And because those soils, have those volcanic soils just absorb it like a sponge. So, just to to give it that longevity and last without having any or very, very little or no rainfall. So it's quite phenomenal that they can grow fruit with very little water, yet it produces a wine that has beautiful minerality. It has a lovely saltiness to it, very luscious, bold, and a variety that has naturally high acidity, which is another big thing about Greek varietals. They do have naturally high acidity and produce some pretty fantastic wines. Do you get excited when people come into George's then? Like we were saying a couple of weeks ago when people say to you, I don't drink white wine, or I don't really like Grenache, and you go, well, actually try this, and then they go, oh, I like this, and you get excited about it. When people come and dine and they say, hey, pick us a wine, you can go, well, you know what, let's try a Greek wine, and they go, wow, this is incredible. Like, do you see it's almost like an education for them as well? Absolutely, and what's important here is to find them a wine that they're going to love. So it's not about what I want or what I'm going to love. I want to know what they're going to enjoy. So it's as simple as maybe even asking what they normally enjoy drinking, whether it's white or red. If it's white, do they prefer something, fresh, crisp and dry, or they like something a little bit more aromatic, a little bit more floral? So what I tend to do at the restaurant is, offer a little taste of maybe 2 or 3 different producers based on what they enjoy, and generally we'll always find the right wine from them, and I think that's important. What do you like with your Greek wines? I mean, we're said so many times we're blessed here in South Australia to have so many options, but you were speaking earlier when I interviewed you, and you were saying you grew up on wine, like your in-laws and stuff like that. Yeah. So you almost have a little tip of the hat to your heritage every time you have a drink.
100%. So growing up, on the far west coast in Trojena, my father was a poor Greek migrant fisherman, but we still had a glass of wine on the table with each meal. And as a young fellow, I would be allowed to have a little drop of wine with some water, and we drank wine every day, and that's what it was. So I suspect nothing would be different for Greek children in Greece, but it's a brilliant country for growing grapes because one, not only is there an amazing amount of history and also different mesoclimates and different varieties, but also you go up north and there's some. I love Nebbiolo, and we make several expressions of Nebbiolo at the winery. But there's a Greek grape variety that's grown typically in northern Greece called Xinomavro, which literally translates into sour black, which are the fundamental flavour profiles of Nebbiolo. But the Greek variety, the indigenous variety, is called Xinomavro, and I just love that wine with any food. Especially George's food, but any food. It's just one of those great varieties that speaks of place, it speaks of honesty, and it speaks of tradition. And George imports several Xinomavro from Greece from various producers. He'll be able to elaborate more on my comments. Well, we mentioned about Assyrtiko from Santorini being the queen of Greek white wine varietals. Xinomavro is like the king of Greek reds. So, going on from what John said, absolutely, it's prominent in northern Greece, generally from 3 appellations or regions: Naousa, Mindion, and another area called Gourmenitsa. And heading down sort of north central Greece, another region called Siatista. So we import 3 producers from northern Greece. 2 are from the region of Naousa, and 1 is from the region of Siatista. The 2 from Naousa we work with very closely are Domaine Dalamata and Estate Fundi, family-owned estates
To give an example, Dalamata, 6 generations of winemaking, been around like since 1840. The son, Costi Dalamata, studied in Burgundy, worked throughout France, Europe, went back in 2011 and took over the winemaking for the family, and produces, as they say, probably some of the greatest wines in that part of Greece. They call it the Grand Cru of Naousa, or that region. So the wines are generally unfined, unfiltered, no addition of yeast, just sulfur, and they're big believers of letting the wine express itself. So talking about Nebbiolo, the reasons why it's been related to that varietal from northern Italy, it has a very similar tannin and acid profile, and classic characters of, depending on the producer in northern Greece, for example, Fundi Estate, make it in a little bit more of a traditional style, where you have the characters of dried Mediterranean herbs, think oregano, thyme, rosemary, and then you combine that with some lovely black olives, tomato, sour cherries, and with age, this is a variety that takes on like a mushroom truffle characteristic. But great food wine, fantastic acid, and works beautifully like with our signature dish, the lamb press at George's. And so it needs something that's a little bit fatty, something that can cut into that fattiness, and this variety does it beautifully.
Yeah, just talking about great grape varieties that indigenous to Greece, I think also, whilst we've touched on Assyrtiko as a great white grape variety and the queen of Greek viticulture, there's also a very little known grape variety called a Robola, and I believe it's indigenous to Kefalonia. Is that
correct?
Is that
right,
correct?
George? Yes, it is.
So this is another an amazing grape variety that speaks of place. And as winemakers and as I think viticulturists, the ultimate expression of something, when you make something in terms of wine, it has to speak of something. It has to speak of where it's grown, its history, the farmers behind it, and its community. And I believe most Greek wine does that, but especially in Kefalonia, which is an island on the Ionian Sea, very pretty place. Have been lucky enough to visit there. And a dear friend of ours is one of the champions of Robola in Kefalonia, and I think maybe, George, if you would like to...
Yeah, actually I've got a great story about this producer, and actually on the weekend I put something up on our Instagram regarding a wine from Kefalonia, the variety 100% Robola, and a story of 2 local lads, 2 very dear friends of ours, who met Petros at a tasting in Sydney. So Paul Georgiadis from Palmaro Estates, based in the Barossa, and Alex Katsaros, who produces Muzzy wines from the Vale, lovely rosé. They went over, met Petros. Before you know it, these boys have flown over to Greece, worked on a vineyard together, and brought back this wine that's been co-branded under Palmaro Estates and Gentilini. And Petros is a very dear friend of ours, and someone who we have the utmost respect for. He's, like John said, he's definitely someone who's championed the varietal, and the boys produced a wine that they brought back here and called it Cross Paths, because they believe people cross paths for a reason in life, and it just has a great story behind it. So it's a variety that definitely can have certain similarities to Assyrtiko. Has a lovely minerality and has that salty edge to it. Probably a little bit more sort of that fresh, limey lemon sort of character to the wine. But again, great with with certain foods, especially seafood. You can actually grab this wine and pour it over oysters, and don't worry about the lemon, just pour a bit of Robola over it, and you're in heaven. So it is a special varietal, and one that we saw quite a bit of in the restaurant, but great with oysters, grilled fish, prawns, any crustacean. So it's a variety that works really well with food. But an island that is not only beautiful, but it's just interesting. The island itself, it has it's just a lot of deep compacted limestone, which has has a big influence on this variety. It can be quite susceptible to disease, but in the right conditions or the right vintages, it can make spectacular, crisp, fresh whites.
So if people want to come and get Greek wine, they come to you and you will be able to point them in the right direction.
Absolutely. You come to the restaurant, we can, take you on a little tasting. If you want something a little bit more depth or structured, we can, make a time. We do that with many of our customers, but also not just for customers and the general public, but also for our industry. So we supply restaurants around the country. We work with, not just Greek restaurants, any restaurant. If there's any interest for Greek wine, we're very happy to share and hopefully offer something exciting for them to list in their venues.
All right, let's talk about the restaurant. 2020 has been a real kick in the nuts for everybody. George's has managed to withstand so many different type of pressure. You said, we're looking at 18 years or whatever, and for the past couple of years, if for anyone who lives in South Australia and familiar with Waymouth Street, it's basically been the roadworks capital of the CBD, where everything has happened, and that such a foot traffic destination for you. And as soon as that goes away and everything's fantastic, our little friend COVID comes in and throws everything up in the air. We were talking, Johnny, in the second episode when you were saying you jumped in that disgusting limo, which did amazing things. For you, George, has this been the hardest year for you as not just obviously someone who owns his own business, but also it's tested everything about your livelihood and probably has made you start thinking about things you never thought you'd have to think about?
Oh, absolutely, Jared. Probably looking forward to seeing the end of this year, to be honest. But there's a lot we can take from it. And, when all this came about early in the year, like anything, you need to think about where you are, what you're doing, what you're offering, and how you can move forward. How can you stay front and center with your customers and offer something to, one, keep your business going, pay your staff, pay your bills, but also ensure that the business can move forward in a way so that when we could reopen, which was back in June, we could have some sort of momentum. So the restaurant actually closed when COVID hit for about 2 weeks. We had to really think about where we were, what we were going to offer, and how we could move forward during closure. And the first weekend we opened, we offered a George's to go pack. And my good friend John from First Drop Wines, we approached John and I said to John, let's look at giving you some support. And like we did with every wine, we did with a different winery on a weekly basis. So our first George's to go pack was for Easter, and we offered a bottle of the Endless Summer Pinot Grigio or a bottle of the Mother's Milk Shiraz in the pack. You got a little bit of lamb, you got a nice mac and cheese, a little bit of salad, some roasted vegetables, some house-baked bread, a little bit of dessert. So it was just offering something that customers could take home, have a little bit of George's, in the comfort of their own home, but also something that we could, just bring in some dollars. And really, look, it's a short-term solution to a long-term problem, but we just had to stay open. We just had to do what we could to reach out to our customers, but more importantly, reconnect with them, and which was a beautiful thing to do. So for us, as challenging as the year has been, it's taught us a lot about our business, how we could how can we can definitely run it more efficiently. And moving forward, we continued with that with Orthodox Easter, with Mother's Day, and general takeaway wasn't something that we wanted to pursue as far as just your standard takeaway. We wanted to offer something a little bit different, and actually now we're even looking at what we can offer for Christmas. So we're putting together 2 options where you could maybe have a nice ham or ham on the bone or a nice turkey, for Christmas, and that's something we'll be working on in the next sort of week or so to offer to our customers. But I think what's important about this year is, for me, was to appreciate the things I suppose we take for granted sometimes. That can be family, and I think appreciating your loved ones in times like this is definitely something that's taught me a lot about not just my family but myself and my business. And moving forward, it does hold a special place in my heart. But at the same time, it's as difficult as it's been. We've got to look at the positives. We just got to push on. I think we've just got to learn to live with the virus. It is what it is. Need to be cautious, But at the same time, it's not a doomsday. It's not a start or end all. We just need to get on with it.
Yeah, it's interesting. We were talking about that dodgy limo that I raced. If you haven't heard our chat, you can go back to episode 2. But it was a way of adding to the business, John, and we're going to speak to Phil Tropiano in a couple of episodes. And he at Chico Palms and his other businesses, he's added things. So like the take-home pizza kit. And we had one of these take-home Georges. And I loved it because when COVID's not here, you struggle to get a booking, which is a sign of the staff that you hire, how you run your business, and I've observed how you do that, and you are such an incredible host that you go up and meet everybody who comes and makes the choice to come and dine at the restaurant. But then the fact that you can now have George's at home, where some people have probably never been to the restaurant because it's always been packed, and they've gone, wow, that means I can have the George's experience. Just you might have to go to their houses individually and shake their hands like you did delivering wine. But when things go back to normal, that's something now that probably as a means of survival, now you have a different arm to your business, just like the wine. And as you said, staying connected with your consumers. So in the long run, we hope that it's actually going to be a strength to the business. Do you reckon?
Oh, 100%. I think, staying in contact with your clients, telling them that you haven't gone away and you do care and you do want to stay with them in terms of, these packs were more than just a food pack. They were a dinner party at home. They had everything in there. They had garnishes with rosemary, beautiful loaves of home-baked bread, and they just still spoke of, the great hospitality. And I guess a Greek word, talking about Greek wine is philotimo, which is something that doesn't really exist in any other language, where one extends the olive branch and shows hospitality and shows a genuineness to be connected and some love to one another. So George did that brilliantly, and we did that in our crazy limo, Jared. And you spent many a day in the back there.
Still washing myself,
stuck to the seats, and we covered the whole of Adelaide and the metro area, delivering wine and just being in touch with people and just saying, hey, we haven't gone away. We're still here, and thanks for supporting us.
It was a really confronting time. Like, let's be really honest. It was a confronting time. You were driving a limo, John, going, this is the only way I'm connecting with people. I don't know what's happening with the wine industry, and that conversation continues. And then we pull up on Waymouth Street and we see you, George, at probably your most vulnerable. But that was a real thing which was affecting so many people. What I wanted to finish on was asking you a question which I asked you when we were sitting there that day, and I saw a image on the wall right near the bar, and it was of your father. I loved you telling me about your dad. It was just amazing, and I don't think anyone walking into that place would know the connection that you have with your dad, but also like the fact that he's there inside George's. I think that's amazing, and it's taking the time to learn. It's not just a venue where you have your business. I've said to you so many times, John, you selectively pick your staff because they represent the brand. It's a culture. And I think you talking so passionately about your father was amazing.
Yeah, there's 2 images in the restaurant of Dad, and that one in the bar was a photo taken in Argentina in the early 60s. Dad was in the Navy, and he was a musician, and with the Navy, he travelled to South America and spent 3.5 years in Buenos Aires, and from there he came to Australia, went to Sydney, and there was a promoter looking for a band to play at a wedding, and Dad went to Canberra, met Mum, and the rest is history. They're still there today, and having Dad up there, for me, I have the utmost respect for him as a person, and I've always said this, if I can bring my boys half as well up as what Dad brought us up, I'd be a pretty happy bloke. So, Dad's his work ethic, what he taught me, I hold very close to my heart today. Always have, always will. And seeing Dad work in his business the way he did, the way he connected with his customers, his family, his loved ones, was very proud to see. And it's something that we have that vision in our business, and it's always nice to have the staff understand that as well, that honour and duty of respect of looking after people, and that's where that philotimo comes in, like John mentioned earlier as well. So it's very, very special. But But I must say, talking about Adelaide and I remember when you came to visit me in the Milkmobile, and it was great to have you guys in. But how great have the locals been in SA? They've really, I think they championed and supported local business in a big way, and I think without them, we definitely wouldn't have got through this.
How do we follow you on social media if people want to get onto Instagram and have a look at your photos and Facebook? Do you know your account names, or have you got someone who does that for you?
No, we do it all ourselves, Jared. It's, we're all behind it. So people can hopefully feel a little bit about what we're about. But yeah, George's Adelaide is our, you can contact us through Instagram, Facebook. We're also on LinkedIn. But please, look us up if we can help you with anything moving forward towards Christmas, regarding any Christmas events or bookings. We're very fortunate having a larger venue. So even with current restrictions in place, it allows us to still, fit up to 32 guests in our private dining room and up to 65 guests in our restaurant. So,
have you ever had Theo, the clarinet player, in George's? I went to a Greek wedding a couple of weeks ago, and Theo, the clarinet player, was there, and he tore it up. He loved it.
Oh, he was actually in about a month ago. He was there with another musician playing for a 40th birthday.
John, the accordion player?
No. It was Chris on his guitar, but it's he was there playing, and the funny thing is that's when restrictions were in place in regards to dancing or standing. So you saw Theo just going for it on the clarinet, and you see a group of people just sitting in their chairs trying to dance away.
And you're like, sit down. You have to sit down if you're drinking. And you love Theo, don't you, mate?
Everybody loves Theo. He's our favourite clarinet player.
Absolutely.
And he does a great job. He's a local legend, for want of a better. And speaking of local legends, just wrapping up, I think, George, you're an institution on Waymouth Street, 18 years. I think your birthday was last Melbourne Cup. And in about April, I don't think any of us knew what was going to happen. We sort of looked at each other with blank faces and blank looks saying, what the hell is going to happen during the lockdown. But you've made it to 18 years, so congratulations. You should be very proud of your achievements.
Thank you, Jared.
We look forward to the next 18 years and other ventures. Well done, George.
Hopefully. Thanks, guys. Thank you for having me, and thank you for your support during this year, because both of you have, been amazing as far as the support, the phone call, the text, just to even say hello, g'day, how are you? It means a lot, and for me, it's what friends are about, and I have the utmost respect for both of you. So thanks so much, guys.
Love this podcast? Support it and sponsor today. Simply head to AuscastNetwork.com for details.